Hello friends. This is Darlene from Parrot Crush, and today I wanted to show you what it's like to hand feed a little bit older baby bird. These ones were pulled from the nest a little bit late, and so sometimes that can make it very difficult for them to take to the hand feeding, and so it can be a little bit scary to do that. I generally like to pull them around 3 weeks and get them going, because they're much more likely to be extremely, trying to get that hand feeding. As you can see, this little guy is kind of running back and forth. He's ready to eat. The other one, not so much. These ones are only about 5 weeks. So, I'm always concerned about them getting enough nutrition and water and hydration and things like that. So that being said, I do understand that it seems like a really cool thing to do to raise birds and have baby birds, but it's actually a pretty complicated and risky thing to do. Unless you're really up for it, I would highly suggest, not, buying from a breeder who knows what they're doing, because it can really create a lot of heartache. There are breeders out there that will say they'll sell you baby birds at, an unweaned age, and, oh, they're fine, it's the best time to bond. Well, I will say that 50% of the time, even though you may have paid a cheaper price, you may end up messing up that hand feeding and sending that bird to a vet for a $500 bill, and you still might lose the bird. At this stage, they're very delicate and really should not be sold until they're fully weaned, unless you are an expert hand feeder. So this is just what I do. The other thing about it too is that cockatiels are not a super expensive bird, even though we put 10 weeks of feeding into them, and that's 10 weeks of 3 times a day. They also need to be in a heated incubator, so because the food needs to be able to absorb into the crop and into the body without souring. So there's another thing. And you really should, you can play with them some and hold them, but especially after eating, they really should be left quiet to digest the food. And heat is the main thing that will help them. So I heated up for about a minute some filtered water in the microwave, and I only will do the water in the microwave, not the formula, because you can get hot spots in there and burn the crop if you put the formula in there. So my goal is to get this to about 104 degrees. So I'll kind of warm up my bowl a little and put a little bit of water in there. I only have these 2 cocktails right now, so I don't really need to make a lot. This is the hand feeding formula. I'm going to put that in there. So this is supposed to be kind of a soupy cream of wheat kind of, that's a little runny, like I'd probably put more in there. Move that out of the way. Move this out of the way. And I need to work kind of fairly quickly because the heat of this is pretty important. You really don't want it to be under 104 degrees. And I don't really like to go over 107 degrees for feeding. You don't want to burn the crop with the heat. And then on the other part of that, you don't want to sour the crop. So the crop can get soured and not get yeast infections and bacterial infections and kill the bird as well. So all that happy news, if you're learning to hand feed, you should be about scared to death by now. I use digital thermometer. Press that, put it in there. I do it every time. I've been hand feeding for a long time, but my hands are used to being in hot water, cold water all the time. I trust the thermometer, and I would just be quite devastated should I feed a baby bird something that's too hot. It's just really be rough on them. So this is registering about a little over 103. So I'm going to say that's probably fine, especially for this age. Really don't want to go much lower than that. I use these syringes, and I put the warm water in here to keep it warm while I'm feeding. You don't want this to be blasting hot because you don't want to you don't want to overheat your syringe in there. You just want to keep it warm and to the right temperature. Sometimes if I have a lot of babies, I'll have like 10 of these in water. Feed one, feed the next. I usually will put like some paper towels down here just to kind of catch the extra. But you can use a towel. We have bought lots and lots of extra washcloths, so we're not going through too much. Here comes a little boo-boo. Hello. So that little sound that he's making is the baby crying sound. Let's see if I can get a better angle for that. Boop, boop, boop. Me and the camera. So then I'll usually just take the tip out, because in case it's too hot in that little tip right there. Now he's going to go ahead and lock on and get crazy. They usually have this kind of pumping thing that they do. So if you just kind of gently hold them still, you can get it in there. And that's that. If you see they're choking or coughing, stop and let them kind of recover. They do tend to take it down pretty quickly. So hungry, little boo-boo. And these little dudes, they will eat till they explode. They don't really have an off button, so you need to make sure that your cockatiels take about 10 ml, 10 milliliters. Is that? And then it's kind of a smaller. So then they don't like this, but then I wipe them down because this formula is very sticky and it gets stuck on their hair, their feathers, and their beak, and it's very difficult to get out without giving them a full-on bath. So here's what the crop will look like. It'll be kind of puffy and tight. And then that will go ahead and absorb into the body in a few hours. And they just look like a little buzzard. Yes, they do. So that is sort of some of the pitfalls and helpful hints on hand feeding if it is something that you're having to do with some birds. You can always leave a comment below or go to my website. I've got a contact form on there. It's parrotcrush.com. If you have questions or you're looking for a bird, cockatiels are really great birds for people. They're usually very loving and sweet. The only thing that some people do have allergies to them because they're a pretty powdery kind of dandery bird. So that's just something to look for. But we've got, conures and Quakers and parrotlets. So all of those other type of birds tend to be less an allergy problem. So, so anyways, that's our little lesson today, and we'll talk to you soon.